name is Ngarezani Mudau, and welcome to this session where we'll be focusing on moving from outcomes to actions. And I'm not going to be facilitating this session on my own. I'm with Dr. Bulelang, who will also actually she's the head facilitator. That's why I'm just paving the way. But otherwise, from the last session, we were presented with the EO maturity indicator findings. I don't know if you remember the scale where that assessment put South Africa in. Do you remember in terms of from 0 to 1 or 0 to 100%? Where are we in terms, how are we doing as a country? 70? Were you here? I don't think it's 72. Overall score. Huh? Okay, but it's around 70 something, right? So I think we had good feedback session by the panelists who broke it down in terms of what does it mean for us. And what is important then is to say, what do we use that information? How do we use that information going forward? How does it help us? What does it even mean for South Africa? Did we measure what does the index as it is measure all the aspects or elements or building blocks for maturity in South Africa? Did something stand out for you? Did they present South Africa the way we know it? Did they miss anything? So this is a time where we engage. I think we got the findings, and the panelists also got the opportunity to break it down for us. But now we engage with you as audience. We need to hear from you. How do we prioritize going forward? From the findings, are there specific areas that you think did not come out? Are there specific areas that we need to be focusing on going forward as a community? But maybe before we even get to that, allow my co-facilitator to introduce herself.
Thank you, Dr. Mudau. As my co-chair has already said, our purpose is not really to lecture to you or to tell you something new, but to rather hear your thoughts on the sessions that you've seen this morning to see how we go forward from where we are. So essentially, from this point on, we're moving into actions. We've been doing a lot of talking throughout the years, and now we want to look at what do we prioritize, what do we start with, so that the next time we stand here, we're not talking again, but we're demonstrating the actions that have taken place over time. So to introduce myself, I am Bulelang Sibolla. I am the co-chair of data governance. And I remember earlier on there was a very heated conversation on data sharing. And I hope we can then continue that discussion in this session and even unpack it a lot further to see then if there are these gaps in data or data access or whatever it is related to data, or even generative AI, how do we then move from our concerns into actionable items that we can carry forward? So I will hand over to Dr. Mudau. We've got a number of questions that we have prepared for you, but you're welcome also to think outside the box and fill in the gaps where we may have missed the memo. Okay, so I think we can go directly into the first question, which reads, are there specific gaps in coordinating data access or implementation that surprised you or confirmed your challenges? So over to the floor. I see there's already a hand up. So this is, just for housekeeping, this is how we should conduct the session. When you raise your hand, you give us your name and your affiliation so that we know where you're coming from. Thanks, you may go ahead.
Good day, thank you, ma'am. I'm Major Jan Sleer from the SA Army Engineers. I work in the geospatial environment, specifically the map generation for the DoD, topographic maps and other supporting maps. One of the most important things we've realized inside the DoD is the ability to have a geospatial repository which allows for a centralized approach towards the data. That centralized approach has got two functions. Firstly, geospatial data is big, and as resolution improves, that data becomes exponentially bigger. And yeah, especially when you're adding multiple sensors. The challenge therein lies, you need a central place where data firstly gets reposited, gets hosted, which is accessible to all environments, but not limited with its ability to accommodate new data, firstly. But as important is, it's one thing to have the data. The next important part is the extraction of information from that data. And creating that zone in which the data and the processing is done centrally and made available to all levels of government and all environments, depending on the sensitivity, obviously, of the data, that must be managed by the different government environments. The important part starts with having one copy of a data, or not having that data copied at several places, because now you're wasting money. Because hosting data costs money. So if we can create a central space inside government which can host data for all different government departments, copied, saved once, but where all different government departments can have a environment which is theirs, which they do their data analysis and add value-added products, but also having the ability to have access on an easy way, in an integrated way, to be able to learn from each other, to be able to share through that common platform, that would ease the ability to transfer knowledge, data sets, and information. But that can only work when you've got a big central repository where the guys doesn't have to worry to copy another data set onto their server kind of situation. Because now you can start to leverage the power of the data and also the ability to work in an integrated environment. And that's also where the DoD needs to be able to link to that environment with disaster. Are we looking at the disaster side in cooperating? But the big challenge goes about government needs to put that down for us, because only a geospatial environment can understand the importance and will have to be able to leverage the financing from government to be able to finance proper infrastructure through which it can happen. And once that is there, it can be leveraged from all levels, from the highest level, from Treasury, highest level up to the top, the President's office, down to the lowest local government, which has got the ability to be able to utilize this platform and to be able to not to having to have built their own server because the server will be there. Having the access, making it easy. Veldrifts, municipalities does not have the money to put a geospatial server down. Mm-hmm. But why can't they just share?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that suggestion. I think if I can summarize it for the benefit of the audience and for the audience to also contribute to what has been said, there's a need for a centralized data hub that is government authorized, where people don't necessarily have to have several different copies of the same data in different places, but we can all share the data because it's government funded, and therefore we access it there and we can create our analytics based on this. So we've also seen the GeoKnowledge Hub being presented early this morning. Could this then be considered as one step in that direction, or is this something totally different that we're looking for?
I think the GeoHub is a starting point from where that can happen. But what is important is creating the hardware and processing infrastructure which allows that GeoHub to be under control of the South African government, available to all government departments, and integrated as a service in which not all the government departments have to have their own small server somewhere.
Understood.
Let's start to work together.
Yes.
Build one big server, one big processing environment, and share it.
Okay. So Sansa would like to respond to that.
Yeah, not necessarily Sansa though, but I think we do have a number of initiatives that are aimed at making sure that we have access, or we centralize the different geospatial data sets, including images, in a structured manner. So at SANSA, we have Earth Observation Data Center, which is housed at Hartbeespoort at our ground station. So we do have infrastructure there for storage. I mean, of course, we have infrastructure to downlink the data from the satellites. And once downlinked, then we have enough capacity to store and process what we have. But of course, the facility or the infrastructure needs to be maintained, looking at the data that we are anticipating to have as like from the different government end users, so that then we keep it relevant, or otherwise it's able to serve its need. So we can only do that and plan forward, of course, through engagements with all the key stakeholders who are interested. So of course that is focusing on Earth observation data, but specifically looking at satellite data. So I see Bulelo, I think, is gone. I don't see her. Bulelo was here from rural development. They also they are mandated to acquire aerial photography. So they also have the infrastructure to store. But I think in terms of processing, also the Digital Earth South Africa was actually meant to, or is meant to bridge that gap in terms of making sure that the users don't have to download the data, store it in their servers, and then get the processing tools. So with the Digital Earth South Africa, we have a platform where researchers and technical users are also able to go consume data sets, even if they're not necessarily housed at SANSA. They can still access other data sources through that platform. But otherwise, also in Earth observation, we also have SCION, who are also responsible for the in situ information, Earth observation data. And I think also through the CSI initiative and all the committees, there's also coordinated efforts as well to ensure that publicly available or acquired data is made available. And those who are responsible for acquiring the data, they also maintain and make sure that all the relevant metadata is also collected and made available. So I think there's definitely a need for bigger conversations, maybe at different levels, so that we are able to then identify those gaps and also opportunities that exist. We also have SIO's portal, which is aimed at directing the end users to the different data sets and platforms that exist in the country. And also, I think in terms of spatial information, we do have special, I'm not going to say the name correctly, but there's some SDI Act related data discovery platform. What is it called, Leo? Electronic metadata catalog, right? So there are different, we do have like a few initiatives that are focusing on data acquisition, ensuring that those who are mandated to acquire and maintain, do their part. There are also effort in terms of making sure that the data is discoverable, also looking at the knowledge hub as well. But I think also in infrastructure, there is also enough effort. So I think there's definitely maybe those dedicated communications or discussions maybe that need to happen at a higher level to ensure that the platform serves all the stakeholders, yes.
So maybe to extend I see the hands and I'll give them time also, but maybe then give the opportunity to Sayon also to say what they can do in terms of providing data access or coordinating data access more from a standards perspective. I can see you over there.
Thanks, Bulena. I'd say on the approach we've taken is that of a distributed system, whereby what unifies the data that we host is actually around metadata harmonization. Because what we realize is that some institutions are at different levels of maturity when it comes to data infrastructure. So where people have infrastructure, we harvest metadata into the platform and point data sets to those. And where that infrastructure is lacking, we try to provide those services for hosting as well. But what really unifies this on the platform is the metadata standards. And we look at that from working across domains as well, not just from the point of view of spatial data. So there's biodiversity data that needs to be brought in as well. So we look cross-domain harmonization. And an example would be oceans, for example, where we have our infrastructure, but we also support the FFE in developing MEMS, the Marine Information Management System. And CSIR is also a partner in that.
Okay, so harmonization of disparate data reserve could also be an alternative to having one big hosting environment. What does the rest of the community say? Stuart. Oh, I think Flora, you can go after Stuart. I'm so sorry.
And Chisi.
And Chisi, sorry.
Just a word of warning, this is good, but you need a user requirement. Don't do build it and they will come. If you're going to go about harmonizing, which is good because most of your technical resources are hopefully there, but it has to actually have the capabilities that, for example, the major wants and OSIMs wants and everyone else wants, and that's not that simple.
Thanks, and I think that's the starting point is by engaging the communities as we are right now. Thank you. Chisi?
Thank you, Chair. My input with what has been, with the challenge that was posed onto us in terms of getting a centralized repository. I do agree that the Geoknowledge Hub is the work that we, as a community, we have invested a lot of time into developing, and therefore, right now, it is up to us as a community to make sure that we are able to harvest all the hard work that we have put in, and we load our data set, we load our material, our resources on the Geoknowledge Hub. And also, I do recognize that within the Geoknowledge Hub, there is a part that you did mention that is very critical, and especially to the users out there, the part of the processing capability or hosting that part is, and I do believe that with that we need to engage further in terms of is there a possibility of expanding the current Geoknowledge Hub to also accommodate the processing, because at the end of the day, although it was a mirror system, based on the international geo system. We can also make our system to be to speak to the requirement and the need of our community in South Africa. So I do believe that the part of processing capability, we need to engage on it as a community. And again, let's build this Geo Knowledge Hub. Let's input information on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chisi. Flora?
Okay, thank you, Cham. Coming back to the question on the screen, I have a suggestion. I think we need to strengthen our collaborative engagements. In the morning, I think Stuart mentioned Venn diagram, which is very key. For example, you know, municipalities are great consumers of Earth observation, but there's no capacity. And I saw some of the presentations talking about the universities that are capable of producing candidates or students that are equipped to do the job. So I'm thinking if we can look into a Venn diagram collaborative engagement whereby we talk with universities and maybe we have a model that will convince Auditor General on how universities will work with institutions, especially at local government, maybe a period of 3 to 4 years based on performance, where we equip those municipalities with students and we have them trained and we sort of like see how maybe an initiative like Geo-Knowledge Hub can benefit the municipality and maybe start resolving the issues on the ground. I think that can also contribute towards the sustainability of funding to Earth observation, as the panelists were talking about sustainable funding and procuring this service. So my suggestion is that we look into that Venn diagram and we ensure that what we are producing is actually impacting the livelihoods of people on the ground, because at local government, that's where people are, that's where services are rendered. We have like presidency projects that are there continuously, like your rural road asset management, which is in need of this Earth observation data consistently from year to year. So if we can invest on those projects that are already there and see how we filter resources into capacitating municipalities, because data can be there, but if there's no one who's consuming, is there a benefit? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention up to now. I've got a suggestion. Some people may not like it, but I would like to give opportunity to the people who were not here on the panel, at least as a start. I would like to give everyone an opportunity to give us their input. I think the panelists have already interrogated and assessed the report, the maturity index report or indicator. So I think it would be good to also hear the feedback from everyone. Otherwise, then we might as well just continue with the session earlier. So apologies, I'm not trying to cut you, Imran. I think you are not accepting my apology. No, we'll come back, but I think it will be good to hear everyone just so we understand their perspective as well. I think we'll get a lot of guidance from the panel members. You have already shared your insights, and we really appreciate. So I think just going back to the centralization of the data, just one moment. I see Ms. Mudeoli is here on the centralization of data acquisition. Because, of course, to have a platform, the data collection should be also coordinated. So we do have an initiative, at least looking at EO data collection, that the department is initiating to ensure that at least data acquisition is centralized, so that we reduce the efforts of duplicating the efforts of data acquisition in terms of individual government departments going to buy data. Ms. Mudeule.
I just came into the room, so I missed the
Yes.
question if there was any.
The initiative on the centralization of satellite data acquisition from the department side.
Okay. Yes, there is an initiative that we would like to start to work with other government departments to see how we can, I think as I mentioned on the panel up there, but I thought maybe you said you didn't want to, you were up there to speak. Anyway.
No, that one she must speak.
To see how we can centralize, especially the procurement of satellite imagery, in order to save on the depleting government funding that we experience. So that's an initiative that we've just started, and we've already sent out letters, and we're trying to have a first meeting with the rest of the government departments. So that is something that has just started. We'll just monitor how it goes. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you've said it better than I would have. So, but anyway, let's move on. There's a hand there.
Thank you very much. I think I can introduce myself. But probably I need to also indicate that besides being in the military and at UNISA now, at UNISA we have the 10 catalytic niche areas, one of which is the space that we're discussing, and we're dealing with all the levels: maritime, airspace, transport, energy, and air. The reason I'm raising this is because, having been involved in the development of the procurement law and having been part of the hope of having an African platform for procurement, the issue that keeps on coming is what I raised: the issue of ensuring the privacy of data. Recall that in South Africa, when you talk to Papaya, you even include companies, whilst in other entities you are dealing with individuals. Now, the lawful processing of data with all those 8 principles need to always be there. And I've been trying to check if I've listened properly. I've not as yet heard how we ensure that the GDPR-based lawful processing, if it's, for example, is data from Botswana, and Papaya, if it's data from South Africa, or if you are using any other country, because most of them are using GDPR, how are we ensuring those principles? Because those principles, they deal with everything, including the security of data at collection, transit, and even at the time when then you want to dispose it. I feel I would have failed in terms of my mandate not to raise that, because it becomes critical. You can't talk about harmonization if you are having different platforms in terms of what's happening, for example, in SADC, and what is happening in ECOSOC, and what is happening in COMESA. You need a serious cap. And as we speak, within data privacy discourse, we still have issues. So I'm wondering how you're dealing with that, because we still have those issues. The second one, as I looked at your strategic levers, there's the one on innovation. I was interested in knowing, being part of the IP discourse globally and even with WIPO, I wanted to get a sense of how we're dealing with innovation as Africans to ensure that the infrastructure we're talking about is ours. Because if the infrastructure is ours, not a leased one, then we can talk about the privacy of the data. We can talk about data sovereignty, which is critical. And that is why you will find, if you talk about the data adequacy globally, you'll find that there are countries currently now, or continents, that say, within Africa, I would choose Kenya. And then I will transact with the US because of data adequacy discourses. And AI has brought a different dynamic now, which is making it extremely difficult if your infrastructure is not at the standard the other person wants. You won't share the data with you. And I felt I need to place that because as we speak now, we are in the Global Internet Governance Forum in Norway. These discourses around infrastructure are critical for data. And if we're saying about data and utility of data, we need to be aware that cybersecurity is always there. How do we protect the data? Maybe as I close, I want to give a simple example. I was one of the people that were had the ability to actually stand out to initiate the existence of a department that recognizes veterans. One of the things that we wanted was a database that enables a veteran from Congo, from Australia, from Kazakhstan to actually verify the data. Let me tell you now, with all the knowledge about the centrality, with all the availability of CETA, I want to be very practical. When I wanted to verify through Home Affairs that this person, the data, I want to verify I have the data. The issues of security at source was critical. I don't think you will not have such problems also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're raising important questions, and we should definitely take you up with your experience. You will definitely add a lot of value in our CoPs on data governance and also on the infrastructure as well. Because, I mean, we also talking, we want to make sure that the technology is accessible and all that. We want to also use emerging technologies as well, machine learning, AIs and all that. How do we ensure, data privacy without, of course, slowing down opportunities or preventing innovation? I think those questions are very important, and I don't have an answer. Imran, do you have an answer? No, you only talk when we ask you to talk. Yes, but I think, I mean, the questions that you are raising, definitely we need to be asking ourselves as we move forward as a community, yes.
If I can add on to that, it's a very interesting set of issues that you raise over there, but they speak to the heart of data governance. You cannot have data access, data sharing, data, whatever you can call it, without proper core data governance being addressed. And data security is one of the issues that data governance looks at. But I think what Leo mentioned, he said this on the side, but this is what he was trying to allude to, that if you don't centralize everything, if you allow everyone to be responsible for their own security, you at least get to a point where you can say there is a certain point of failure, and that point of failure could then be identified, right? So that means that every data provider who's mandated to do so has a responsibility to ensure that their data is secure. They have a responsibility to have rules and regulations on who and how the data can be accessed and used as well. In terms of, and I'll give Leo an opportunity, I know Nale said we must not speak to the same people, but this is core to what he does, so, and I think we should start talking about these issues here. But once you start talking about AI and the different issues that it raises, I know that NEOSS and the CoPs are looking at a methodology where we can bring in geo-AI into the spectrum of what do we call them? Communities of practice. And in due course, I think if we have your details, we should be able to invite you to these forums. So Leo is often my clever brain. I'll let him speak and then He says the things I want to say in a smart way. So I'll give him an opportunity, and then I'll hand over to Nale to carry on.
Sorry, on what?
Data
AI.
security?
Security.
Yes.
I think with AI advancements, there's a new concept within the Research Data Alliance where they're exploring data visitation. So my response earlier touched on distributed systems. So that's how we currently work. But data visitation looks at how technologies can be used to access data platforms while following the regulatory or institutional rules of the organization housing those data sets. So I think there will be some guidelines along those lines in the near future. But what I can advise you to explore for now is something called FAIRLYZ. FAIR, L-Y-Z. Yeah. So I think you can just explore that concept and see what the suggestions point towards. And then within the Research Data Alliance as well, the data visitation working group or interest group is free to join. So you can actually join those discussions and weigh in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on. Do we have any other input? We'll start here. So, no, Mkolisi, you had your mic on. So we'll come back.
Oh, it's on. Okay. I got the impression that right means off. Anyway, thank you so much, colleagues, for arranging this workshop. When we're thinking about the Earth Observation Maturity Index and the existence of the community of practices, I just want to find out how we can use them to fulfill our objectives in the Department of Water and Sanitation. The department is currently developing, it's in a project, we're busy with a project where we're developing a digitalized integrated national water and sanitation monitoring systems. And we have developed a design of a system where we have made a recommendation for the use of Earth observation in water resource management. So a number of Earth observation-based technologies have been recommended, remote sensing-based technologies. But when I listened to the presentation about the EOMI, Earth Observation Maturity Index, it seems very high level, national scale approach, method. How do we now bring it down to applications such as water resource management, where we look at the innovations, partnerships, and mapping up the stakeholder ecosystem so that we make it practical and tangible and something that solves real problems. How do we now bring it down to that? As far as data management is concerned, we have also developed a data management strategy for water and sanitation in South Africa, which focuses on ensuring that data is available, accessible, secure, and also promote stakeholder partnerships. And how do we now practicalize all these methods that we have presented using the existing policies and strategies? Because at a strategic level, everything I believe is in place. How do we now use this community of practice and make it solve real problems so that if someone wants data, we know that data is available? Because yes, we want a centralized system. We must admit that it's not always possible. to have a national central system. Some data are more secure than others. The security level for some data is higher than others. Acid mine drainage, for example, you can't just let the data sit everywhere. There's legal implications. So I feel like this EOMI can help to identify, do a business requirement specification, where we say, let us be realistic, which data can we really make available, broadcast it for everyone to see, but which data can only be accessible to certain people with security levels, so that we are realistic with what we want to achieve. And Earth observation data is not always simple to access. It requires, in my experience, a lot of skills. Sometimes you need to use Google Earth Engine, you need to use the Pythons of this world to process the images into something that you can generate a trend line and use, those kind of things. So from these strategies and initiatives that we are doing as institutions individually, how can we use this platform of the CoPs, the EOMIs, and to make something work, so that when we come back, at least we'll say, okay, we have developed, we are partially there. This is the data that you can actually access, but these are the challenges that lead us not to be able to access this data. And here are the stakeholders that we've mapped. We know who does what, whose mandate is it to do what. We know SANSA is responsible for, is a custodian for Earth observation data. That is a good place to start. And then what else can everyone else do? So that's what I want to find from the DWS perspective. How can we use this to make things become realistic, with realistic solutions?
Yes. Thank you very much. I think from what you are raising, it actually, I think, talks to another component of the indicator, the uptake, right? Imran, yes. So we definitely need to take it down to maybe a theme level to then identify those gaps, or maybe even understand what are those challenges, so that we can then have information that you can use as the end user or a stakeholder. We are taking the notes, but I think our role as the COP is to engage, and then, of course, from here we need to then action in terms of how we can then support the different stakeholders. So we will definitely be in touch. I'm not sure if you are participating in any COP, but if you're not, maybe you can start looking at the one that is closer to your the work that you do, the water-related applications. But I think the point that you are raising, it's very important, which, I mean, this is what I was saying also in the beginning. We have this study done at a national level. It presented interesting and, important findings. Then what? We can definitely use it to address some issues that we have, but for some we may need to go further down. And I think this is, like from your question, maybe it's an area that we must also look at doing. I think Imran had his hand.
Just to maybe put a thought and contribute to the whole sort of centralized data repository and versus the distributed one as well. I think one of the elements that is, for me, as important as security is also the issue around data custodianship, quality, looking at quality of data, making sure the data is updated and the whole curation of data as well. And that is an important element to be taken into account. And if you have a centralized repository, who has responsibility for having to do the data curation and the data quality type of work as well? And it becomes a bit more difficult, because essentially, ideally, quality should be the responsibility of the entity that is collecting data.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you, Stuart. Sorry, no, I think it was Leo first. Sorry.
Thanks. Something that I forgot to highlight maybe in my responses is that we haven't put too much emphasis or pointed out how important data licensing is in all these discussions. So even with a centralized facility or a well-coordinated national data policy, if we can get to that point, without stressing the importance of data licenses, because that's what highlights how data should be used in the first place, whether it's open or restricted. And in the case of data with restrictions, it could be from commercial value, or even in our context where we have an open data policy, sometimes we deal with sensitive data sets, like location of endangered species. So users still need that licensing information. So I think that's something to take into consideration as well when we discuss data governance.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Yes. And also with some licenses, they will actually restrict you from even sharing that, or not sharing, distributing that data. So that's an important element also to look at. Yes. We're gonna go to...
Chair, I don't know if you can hear me online here.
I was wondering who's talking. Was your hand up?
Apologies, Chair, for maybe appearing to be disregarding the decorum, but for a long time it has been.
Apologies, I can't see you. Sorry. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. And as a result, in Xhosa they say so many speakers as a result have said some of the things I wanted to say. Ambassador Nondas, a researcher at the CSR under Climate Services. Chair, I wanted to make 4 contributions, and I realized that 2 of these contributions have been made already, so I'll mention those last. I want to start with this one, which I think is quite important, and I was listening earlier in the day, and I think Stuart mentioned this maybe in passing. I think what is more important, what has been said is important. What I think is also important is data intelligence. And I think one of the speakers speaking almost on behalf of the municipality spoke to my experience as well, that, data might be available, and if one is lucky, there might be somebody to process those data. And the question then is there somebody available to interpret the intelligence so that, the decision making can be done? If you think about climate change, this is what municipalities will tell you. Data is available, but to do the final processing and interpretation requires skills that might not be there in some instances, local municipalities you think about. So I think this is more important. But moving upstream, there is my second point on data infrastructure, which I think has been spoken to as well. But I think we really need to think about the decentralization of infrastructure that is adequate for, think about a person sitting just 50 kilometers away from Alice, where there is weak network, but requires these same data sets. How should they access them? So some of the infrastructure that is required to access and process at a much more local level, at local and district level of municipalities, is unavailable. But my third point, Chair, is on the index. I think the index is wonderful. It's wonderful that we can be able to track progress on such an important thing as the development and utilization of Earth observation data. But I think, Chair, it's all about the impact. If the impact is not reflected on the index, to say, yes, you use this data, they are developed, but are we able to see some direct impact, and how do we decipher this impact from some impacts of other technologies and other investments? And the last one, Chair, is on the communities of practice. Chair, some of us are multidisciplinary, and I was just wondering, is there some consideration of how that would work? Earth observation climate change would seem to combine everything, but I was just thinking about a multidisciplinary or a melting pot of these committees of practice where they do meet all together to share. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You're definitely raising important elements that we need to take forward. One size does not always fit all, so it is important that we also look at what different users require, as also highlighted earlier even by Stuart. While we are building the ideal, how do we reach out to the farmer in a rural community where they might not even have access? So I think what you're raising is very important, and it's definitely something that needs a special focus going forward. And also we also need to make sure that we converge as the CoPs and address these issues that are not necessarily focusing on one thematic area. So we'll definitely take your advice and also your input forward. Sir, please mute yourself. Yes, but we thank you for your input. It's valuable. We definitely need to consider your input going forward. Was it Stuart?
Thank you, Nale. So I think it was Asanda online who has set me up nicely now, because I think we need to approach this problem very differently. Here we are talking about data for a series of unspecified problems. The problem is by far the most important thing. So these days, the way you typically approach the value chain and to get to a user requirement is you become technology agnostic. You forget you've got data, you forget what kind of satellites you have, you forget all of that, and you go in and you understand across different thematic areas what is the user decision making and what represents the greatest potential value to users. And it's only once you've engaged with that is you go back, you do some reverse engineering back into the EO to figure out how you might solve some of these problems. And this should be done in a, it's not just co-design, it's starting from the user's decision making.
Yes.
And I mean, these are all the lessons we learned through things like OSIMs and stuff like that. Was that we were actually doing it wrong. So, and this is where the COP and this community can come in to basically say, and let's not forget, we're not starting from nowhere. I mean, we've spent 2 years now killing ourselves at SANSA doing our user requirements, right? Those are still valid.
Definitely.
That's a very good starting point. But I just feel it's important to stress that you've got to start with the user decision making and the user value rather than the data.
Thank you. I'm not going to add. Thank you. We need to move to the next questions, but I think we are already touching on them. I think there was a hand there. Otherwise, if you have any input or comments, you are more than welcome to share using Slido. That's the ID. We'll also address them.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, I would like to say thank you for the organizers for this workshop, as is one of many. I think for us, it's exciting for us to now know that we have SA Geo Knowledge Hub. But I did have 3 questions. The first one was whether the SAGO will have a marketplace similar to the International Geo Knowledge Hub. So that was answered during the presentations. And then I think the second one would be, is it possible, I think if we can take this for the organizers and then the people who will be running the Geo Knowledge Hub centrally, for us to centralize the training, because I know individual contributors will be able to offer trainings there, of which I'll be interested to do that as well. But is there a way that we'd be able to formalize the trainings so that maybe they're linked to maybe national qualifications? Because that way, I think also the schools, the FET colleges can then have access to that as well. I think that was whether we do it online or physical trainings, just to centralize and formalize the trainings so that the national qualification linked. I think that's the second question about training. And the third one was, since the GeoKnowledge Hub would be linked to the International GeoKnowledge Hub, how can we, I think some questions came around earlier that also said, that mentioned data, having data sovereignty where we own the data, unlike before. We know what happens. We've seen in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, where some data sets and maps were actually blocked, where you can't see in certain areas where you would normally want to see. And as researchers and education people that would want to learn what the effects of those wars are on those part of the world. But now we can't access that because those parts have been blocked because of lack of data sovereignty. Another thing I would say, how can we strengthen the GeoKnowledge Hub or the research and development, especially the science, Earth observation, to be as strong as the relationship between Russia and the US, currently in proxy wars, but they still maintain the ISS research and development project effectively without, even though they're fighting, but they still maintain that relationship despite those differences. How can we strengthen the GeoKnowledge Hub and Earth observation community to have that kind of relationship, even despite maybe future differences?
Thank you very much for the questions. We'll pass them to the GeoKnowledge Hub, the National GeoKnowledge Hub coordinators. But I think the points that you are raising are important, especially in trainings, and of course, data sovereignty. It's key with everything. But we need to build our own infrastructure. We need to have our own infrastructure so that we can also then have access to any data as and when we need it. So I'm going to move on to the next question. Keep those questions and comments on Slido coming. We'll look at them. So, okay, there's one question that Dr. Wulelang would like to.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to quickly answer the two questions on Slido. Kwanele has been nudging us to answer them for quite a while. So I'll start with the second question that says, the knowledge of data access appears to be restricted to this audience, yet our beneficiaries are decision makers. So I think as Dr. Madau also said earlier on, we are not making the decisions at this stage. We are facilitating a discussion and noting all the concerns and suggestions and ideas that are being brought up, and we will package all this information, which will then be summarized by NEOSS and DSTI at the end of the conversation. So I think no one must feel like they are being dominated in any way. We just go in the direction that the discussions are going, but all the comments and suggestions are valid and we note them. Then the second one, I think it has already been addressed. Listening to some of the challenges raised, even at the municipal level, should we be speaking to Stuart's point about the need for stronger government demand to support SMMEs can the COPs, in reflecting on the gaps raised, explore ways of responding that lead to a sustainable roadmap for partnerships between government and the private sector? We note this question and we will pass it on to NEOSS. Thank you.
Yes, maybe also just to add on that, as SANSA, we do acknowledge the gap in terms of industry that is focusing on space. So we do have initiatives that are looking at working with small companies, entrepreneurs in communities to address the challenges at a community level. So of course, we can do more if we all come together from the different spheres of government. So I think we can move on to the next question. So this is still talking to the outcomes of the Earth Observation Maturity Indicator. How can we as community support government, academia and industry to respond more decisively to these maturity EO maturity findings? I think from what Mkolisi said already, he's asking he's suggesting if we can go down to look at, for example, water and see where are the gaps, who's doing what way, and so forth. But I think maybe if you have more suggestions, how do we assist government, DSTI, and other key role players, academia, and industry to respond to some of the findings? Do you have any suggestions? Any thoughts? There's a hand here, yes.
My name is Khonze. I think as Kolisi was speaking, he reminded me of a project that we did a while ago in Witugo. It was a bunch of wonderful ladies that wanted to start a small business. So in the area, there was no water in the Witugo water. It's actually still the same situation. And so one of the local banks were interested in helping to fund them to be able to start some sort of water franchising project. But when it came to de-risking the project, we actually had a problem because the quotations that they got to do the drilling and do the assessment was more than 2 times what they actually needed to start the small business. So I'm thinking, a department like water and sanitation could look at areas that are struggling with water and see what EO data is available, and then, start some sort of SME, platform to assist in that sense. Sorry, I'm very practical. I don't know if that helps.
It does. Thank you so much. There was another hand. Yes. Noted.
Yes, well, my name is Benedict. My suggestion is not too practical, it's just simple. I think what we can do as a community is to actually show or help government, academia, and industry to let them see the fiscal value of Earth observation data. Because I can, like for instance, many people don't know that Earth observation data can help optimize recycling and where to open up recycling sites. It's just as related to what Fonzi said. So if we can literally put a price tag to show them that, no, this is how much money we can make and save through Earth observation data, I'm pretty sure and certain government and industry will come running. So yeah, it's simple as that.
Yes. Thank you so much. I think it comes back to also the need to understand what the users require, because if we target the investors with that solution, right, they will definitely come on board. So there's that need for us, as much as we get excited with the research and technology, but to also balance. Of course, it doesn't need to be the same people. Another group could also be focusing on ensuring that we communicate in the language that the investors would understand. And I think also coming back to the example you brought, I think I'm not really shocked that there was no mention of gender or anything on the report, because for me, that's why I was thinking, if we were to really bring it home, there's a lot that we can learn or even do from the analysis. We're talking about so many researchers. I'm a woman, so how many are women, for example? But it's not even about just gender. We all know that there are we are exposed to challenges differently. And I mean, if you go to the villages, really you try to understand how a normal day looks like for a normal village person. You really come back to the office and think differently if you are looking at deriving those solutions that can, assist in terms of accessibility, whether they're looking at, collecting water, collecting wood, collecting food, buying food or, accessing health services and so forth. So for me, if I were to advise the CoPs, I would also advise that we have the baseline now, can we go down? How do we, make sure that we assess the capability or the maturity, looking at the real world experiences or applications, but looking at South Africa also, looking at the challenges that we are faced with. So definitely we will take your points forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a practical side of issues that we need to address. There was that lever that was talking about innovativeness. One thing that we as innovators, I was looking around, I've not seen a few people, if at all, in the discussion around the procurement, right? And currently, Treasury has allowed sectors to develop regulations themselves. And the reason being that Treasury is applying both the court decisions, but also is allowing us as sectors to develop regulations that suit what we want. And I've not seen these faces there, and it worries me. Because whether you like it or not, I'm in the innovation space. There's one part that kills. For example, there's been a product that has been developed by one of the young entrepreneurs, which is looking at identifying leaks, water leaks. And if you look at that, it should have immediate application in localities. Guess what happens? When this is presented, then whoever is listening will say, I hope the procurement process will allow this. The point is, we're not available to get to the discourse of regulations. The law has gone. But we're not available to make sure that the regulations address the innovation, especially which is chapter 4, which deals with promotion of innovation. That's the first one. The second one is around the issue of registration of IP. What happens currently is that you have, hackathons, because AI and cybersecurity. What happens is that you have participation of young kids, brilliant ideas from deep rural. But those products, they don't get registered anyway because we don't support them. Or if it's in a competition, the ones that have failed, they must seek to finish. We don't have a full pack like you find, for example, in China. The last thing I want to talk about, the reason I was actually talking about the catalytic niche areas, I wanted to raise in a polite way what you've spoken about, the Basadi. Because if we need to make sure that we are alive to the realities that are facing women when you deal with the energy sector, when you deal with aviation, when you deal with airspace, when you deal with construction. And this is the part that I think we need to support. And it must be visible. Because the support in terms of making legislation, not fighting legislation when it is there. And we must be aware that the procurement law is under review. If you engage now, you can be able to change some of the things that are in the law that was enacted. And you have another cut, which was on regulations. But I don't promote that, because regulations are in terms of the law. You need to look at the law as it is now, see if it promotes you, and you propose changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to add, but maybe I can just share the one experience. So we do as SANSA support startups and entrepreneurs through, New Frontiers program. And the question is, how do we then involve them on projects, for example. Remember, it's a seed funding. It's only for a year. If you advertise that tender, they're not going to get it because they're just starting, right? They may, but they might not get. So how do we then, yeah. So I think I'm going to take you up on that procurement, the regulations around that, because there are other ways of doing that, but they will tell you that it will just take forever to even, you'll just forget about even getting the service from them. Because if we don't support them, how do we then ensure that they are able to enter the market and develop those services in a sustainable manner so that they can also compete on tenders as well with the big companies? Yes, thank you. Malisi, I think it was Malisi, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. We'll try to be as brief as possible. My name is Malisi Ndlovu, and my specialty is technology commercialization. So with regards to the issue around innovation and the procurement element, there are interventions underway. However, we must also take cognizance of the fact that South Africa is in a transition mode from us being inherently knowledge generation country towards now becoming a country that wants to capitalize on innovations, meaning that we now investing in ways that the bright minds that has the IP and the solutions to our problems can land into the marketplace, either by making money through new avenues of growth or solving societal issues. But that in itself still needs a sustainable model, because if you're solving problems that people need but they can't pay for, somebody still has to pay for it. So these engagements may not be virtually open to a large stakeholder base. Hence, there are still questions around what is it that we're doing, and are we talking to the National Treasury? Are we talking to SARB? Mm-hmm. The reality is that those conversations are happening, but they may have come through in a closed manner, because what we are also trying to drive is to make sure that as we invest in this innovation, we also safeguard the intellectual property rights so that the state does not lose what it invests into and IP ends up being exported and at our loss. So those are the conversations, but I would like to just park it there, and I encourage that maybe one of the action items from this committee would be an offline conversation where we can take it forward, because if I were to give you a practical example, there is no way that somebody that won a startup challenge can talk commercial conversations and contracting conversations with key market players. The levels of conversation and the metrics of what is required are different. And the text conversations around that are also different. However, I would like to tie back this point that I'm making to the one that I wanted to mention before. I come from the ICT background, which gave me good exposure to the space economy. In everything that I've been trained for on RDI, research, development, and innovation, from private sector, corporate, how they retain market share, is to follow the problem. If you have a solution to anything, for somebody to be able to part with 1 rand of what they are making in their daily lives, you have to provide an undeniable value proposition to their existence. It is then that they will call you back and say, can we now talk around a day of my life? Can you now conceptualize something around what is it that could be possible between my needs and your offering? If you are not able to capture them at the first go on selling them an undeniable value proposition, forget about how powerful your technology is and how useful it is. If it cannot be packaged to be useful for the intended stakeholder by solving their core problem, or rather maybe extending the way they used to do things to a better way where they can make more money or they can get better health-wise or whatever the case is, the core
Yeah.
of their needs is the center of where you start with your solution. Thanks, Chair.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that intervention. Do you want to clap? That's done. No, we definitely need that conversation because that talks to actually the work that we do every day, the research that we do as well. But I think more in terms of supporting startups and entrepreneurs and ensure that we have companies, we definitely need to focus, even if it's not a standalone COP, but those discussions need to take place in terms of, IP registrations and all that. But even before that, what problem are you solving? Okay, thank you. I think there was a hand there first. We'll come to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairs, for granting me the opportunity to present my views. My name is Kegeto Komani. I am a final year BSc Geoinformatics student at the University of Pretoria and also a citizen scientist who actively participates in participatory or citizen science initiatives. So basically, having listened to what the other speakers have had to say on innovation, innovation cannot be just driven by heads of research and policymakers without actively involving the youth in driving that innovation within the Earth observations and space sector. This is evident through the impact of participatory sciences, which gives us students the necessary experience that we will need to further advance the objectives of industry by the time we graduate and not have to spend many years post-studies to gain that necessary experience. So with participatory sciences, this means that we can drive the EOMI objectives not only at policy-making level, but also to grassroots level, meaning that our impact in the Earth observations and space sector can be experienced through multiple generations and not just one generation, which is restricted to just research and policy-making. Yes, and I believe once you are able to drive participatory sciences at a grassroots level, that means that you are able to have greater public outreach where more members of the public understand the impact of Earth observations and not have those questions of, okay, you say you're studying geoinformatics, what does that do for us in real life?
Definitely.
So, yes, with this enhanced public outreach, this would further drive up the maturity of our Earth observations, maturity impact.
Definitely. I agree, 100%. So I don't know if we have such opportunities everywhere, or is it, Pilar, do we have such opportunity for students to participate in such programs?
Yes, but unfortunately, in my view, not enough is being done. Earlier, I alluded to the fact that when we review our curriculum, let's bring the industry on board. That's where you would have a curriculum that would require that students go through in-service training to provide them with the necessary experience my gentleman mentioned.
Yeah.
So institutes are doing that. I think more so technical colleges, TVET colleges are doing it more than universities.
Okay.
And I think universities must come on board as well to give in-service training, to give them the necessary experience they require.
Definitely. I think that will definitely help because I remember finishing my undergrad, I was like, what am I going to do with maths and chemistry? It was like I had no idea. I was not exposed. And I do believe that there's a lot that we can do, like with the graduates at home. So the more they are exposed to, this kind of programs, the more then they are also able to, I think they'll get opportunities to access the market easier. And they won't be bored just sitting at home waiting for a job.
So
and also when they get to the corporate world, or whether they're starting their own, they are able to address the issues on the ground with the solutions, using, of course, the learnings from school. Yes.
So if I can add on to that, I know that University of Pretoria, as much as they're not reviewing the curriculum, but they do always invite external industry speakers to come and speak with the final year students. And that's from that point where people can then start matching themselves to different types of companies that they want to do internships at. So maybe this is another call to the community to also try and not just post your adverts, we need students in newspapers and on websites, but to go to the universities, speak for a day, half a day, engage with the students, and that's when they'll get to meet you as well.
Yeah, okay. There was a hand there. Ma'am.
Greetings, everyone. Tongwane Namane, Space Commercial Services. We're a private space company in the industry, more in upstream, developing space infrastructure. So we would be the guys that would actually be providing the data for Earth observation. I'm also a committee member at the International Aeronautical Federation. The point that I wanted to bring across about cross-sector collaboration, particularly with the maturity indexes, I think it has been revealed quite succinctly that there are very specific challenges that are geographically based. So when we speak about the group of Earth observations, for example, this is solving global problems. But we find that in the private industry, we still need to do a lot of market development when it comes to actual use cases of the applications of Earth observation. I find it particularly interesting that this integrated workshop for NEOSS theme is around building momentum with national uptake. And that means that essentially we aren't developing the necessary resources or building the necessary use cases or economic cases around why Earth observation is critical. So I'll give an example. SANSA, the South African National Space Agency, used to have a challenge, the Earth Observation Challenge, that they ran quite successfully for a number of years. And what the requirement was for universities and youth and private companies was to come up with solutions. And one of the years, in terms of the constellation that we're building for critical infrastructure development, someone actually built a system for mapping the development of informal settlements, and how then government would have the capability to then deal with spatial housing, how it would have the capability to start giving people addresses, how it would have the capability to then start bridging the digital divide in terms of providing private services as well as in government. Now, if you aren't tying that together with the quality of data around, you'd find, the data that's coming through from Copernicus is coming through from Landsat. This data is sometimes years old. The data is at certain resolutions. Someone needs to understand that you need to utilize high quality data, which is required for particular African solutions, which is required for particular state and private sector and business solutions. So if we're going to talk about innovation, and we're going to talk about intellectual property, we in the private sector are simply saying that how can you expect cost collaboration in terms of us providing data for things like Earth observation if it's just going to be utilized for academic research and not going to be tied very specifically today around solving issues that are required right now. Earth observation is absolutely critical if we're going to be solving some of the issues that we're facing right now, and particularly for our economic development. So my role in particular is commercialization for outer space activities, and that's where, because of my history in finance, we then bridge that development across academia, across government, across civil society, and private industry and industrialization. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Yes, and I think you've kind of led us into the next question. I know we're running out of time, but can you bear with us just for a few minutes and then we'll close quite soon. So the next question is, where do you see the greatest opportunity for cross-sector collaboration to improve our maturity score in future assessments? And I think the lady just told us all about what they do. And this leads us into that discussion. How do we then, as private sector, public sector, academia, how do we then collaborate to improve our maturity score? Yes, Dan.
I looked at the 5 elements of the structured evaluation process. If you take infrastructure out, everything talks to people, everything, stakeholder ecosystem, uptake, partnerships, innovation. So I think being that my core interest is in developing the next generation, I think we need to take the foot off the pedal of the importance of Earth observation and do what Stuart Bernard proposed earlier, which is go to the problem and say, what problem are we trying to solve here? My friends in academia have traditionally prepared students for industry. I believe that's the source of our problems. I think that in the rethink of, instead of adjusting the curriculum to address the needs of industry, we need to prepare the young people to solve the problems that they are facing. Industry's needs change all the time. Okay? You are jumping onto a moon that's not static, it's moving. So, in the preparation, and this talks to SDG number 4, quality education, we need to prepare the next generation not to think like we do. Because look at us currently, what we are doing. There's a disconnect between what we do and the problems that exist in our communities. Chasing papers, you're publishing, you're getting PhDs, you're getting, sorry, they are not attacked. But there's a disconnect between the problem. I don't think we fully analyzed. And I like that Dr. Mdau mentioned the fact that chemistry and what? Didn't know what to do with it, neither did I. We were lucky. But the problem is that we, that generation, that has been 20 years in employment, we are the problem. Because it's comfortable, we are climbing the ladder, we've thrown everybody behind us on under the economic bus. So in the whole model, we need to reconceptualize the true value of this ecosystem of players in government, in industry, and in communities. So I think we need to rethink the way we educate, the purpose for education. We've largely inherited education for servitude. That's the system that you and I come out of. If we are lecturers, that's what we are doing to the young people, what was done to us. So we need to rethink and say, in order to decolonize this system of education that was meant to serve the interests of, I do not want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. Now we have a whole world of workers. So it's a total rethink. As for the young people whom I'm dealing with on a daily basis, I think that you too have to ask yourself and pause and say, okay, we've inherited political freedom. We are clearly suffering and swimming in economic freedom issues. Are we just to continue the script, or are we going to flip the script? There needs to be mentorship between industry players and young people in academia. Not to say, I want to come and do what you are doing. and to say, who the hell says what you are doing is right? A rethink, a total rethink. So it's a reset. We need to develop the young people, prepare them for their life assignments rather than the needs of industry. That is where the disconnect lies, because then why are we all in Gauteng, Cape Town and Durban? Because these are the economic centers. We've left our rural homes. So it's servitude mindset, migrant labor system. So we are not solving the problem, and that's why we even have this event here every year.
Yeah.
It needs to go to the villages.
Yeah, not true. I think just to add on what Dan said, on the mindset, I just thought of this quote from a very smart person. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I do believe that there's hope for our kids and the future generation, so we definitely need to change the mindset. Sorry, go ahead.
Well said. Yeah, I think you can give Dan a round of applause. Okay, so we've had two views, one from the capital side of things and another side more towards how to empower the youth, which is now a cross-sector collaboration between academia and industry. Does anyone have any further thoughts? Yes.
Let me speak as a person who established the further education and training. What has just been said was the reason why we started all together, the further education and training. And I'm sitting here with pain because having established the Further Education and Training Act of 1998 and the Skills Development Act of 1997 of 1998, with the skills level to enable that. What did we do? You know what we did. They are still the same Cinderellas. What we're talking about here is supposed to be done in technical colleges. I want to give you a simple answer. The simple answer is to go back to that policy paper and implement it, because we've never implemented it. We took the money somewhere and we called it free education. And then you left these technical colleges that are supposed to be doing exactly what we're talking about here. The last thing, well, I'm going to speak from an angle of having been a person who has been delivering the strategies for South Africa. In South Africa, we have the State of the Nation. In South Africa, we have, allow me to move out of SDGs. Those are not my concerns. My concerns are what is happening in the root in Tsom. If you look at what we have in the State of the Nation and the State of the Province, at what point are we, even at here, having the state of the province of Gauteng and looking at what are the indicators and then saying to UNISA, UP, develop for us, your researchers must answer this. I'm saying this because in the Defense Force where I come from, when we have all the people from the world, the Defense College, I go there and say, here are the issues for South Africa. Here are the issues from Africa, extracted from South Africa PTY LTT strategic plan and all the strategic plans. Of course, with defense focus, because I was dealing with defense. So whoever, even if you are from Kazakhstan, if you are developing a policy, you will deal with the problems I've given you for South Africa. And that is why you found us moving in terms of the defense force. Why can't we do the same for South Africa now? In terms of us, I'll tell you how. You have clusters, right? And at clusters, that's where we finalize the strategic plans. If someone can tell me that at some point you had a meeting with clusters for them to tell you what is in the strategic plan, I would be very happy. And this is where we lose it. And I keep on saying at UNISA, well and good we have the catalytic niche areas, but all those niche areas, they link to a mandate. At what point are we dealing with the clusters that hold those mandates so that the research topics are relevant? Which goes back to what Upila was saying, that our research must not only be for NRF rating. Yeah. Yes, professorship is important, but the communities that we live in, as I said, must also be relevant. They will be relevant if you ask me, what is the stage of the Eastern Cape Province address? I don't even know. What should I not know? Because we are not actively informed.
Yeah.
And I want to be chaotic and say, look at what is happening in Burkina Faso. Children are coding, cars, these things are being developed because the mindset is support to the people. That's what we need to do.
You? Hi. I think we can close. No. Yes. No, thank you very much for your input, ma'am, and everyone for your participation. We took notes, and they will be discussed, and there will be not actions. You will see evidence that we have taken your input into consideration. Because, yeah, I'm not even gonna try, and yeah. We definitely need to change our mindset. We need to look at this EO technology and other technologies as, yeah, it's a necessity. So how do we make, produce that is necessary available to everyone? And I think that's the question that the COPs, the communities here need to really look at addressing from the different thematic areas. And also then, in terms of our work also as COPs, are we really, responding to the question of the users? Are we really responding to the why? What is it that the users need? I know Miss Magale would ask that question, and she's also part of the COPs. And these are the questions that we really need to look at. It should not be really about us coming here and enjoying the good food that CSIR provide. We definitely need to make sure that our work contributes. Yes, our work contributes to sustainability of the country, security, and the youth. I mean, they are our future, and what are we teaching them now? They definitely cannot see the world the way we've been seeing it. I mean, we've been stuck, like Danny's saying, in the offices. And that's not even, that we are happy climbing the ladder, but we are comfortable. And the youth, they need to, I mean, she just mentioned that the kids in Burkina Faso and other developed countries, they're coding and all that. So how do we support them? And as COPs, how do we ensure that we don't just sit here in Gauteng, we go out and make sure that in Thulamela municipality, in Umtata, for example, now with all these disasters, why are we still having so many fatalities, for example? While if you look at the Mozambique and other countries, as much as the floods could be big, but the fatalities are going down. How come we have flash floods and we lose so many lives, for example? I mean, these are the questions, real questions that we need to be looking at addressing. Having said that, I don't want you to leave depressed. I think there's still tea in the, I think so. There should still be tea in the exhibition hall, the same place we had lunch. But before we close, I would like you to give my co-facilitator, program moderator, a hand. For the great work. It's not easy to facilitate for more than an hour.
Standing up.
And standing, yes, but you did great. and would like also to thank you, but we are not closing yet. Mr. Memela will come and give us, right, you are ready, a closing remark, or do you want us to? Oh, okay, no, that was some instruction. Okay. Okay, while they're preparing, maybe you can clap for me also for. Thank you very much. Travel safe.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, I think what we can do, it has been a very long day, and Ambongani Memela. I think then we will just have to close, but then before we close is the issue of saying it's always very important that to thank everyone and the time and the effort that has been put into ensuring that today's workshop becomes a success like the previous one. But the way how things have happened is just so unfortunate that Lulu had some family issues that he had got to address urgently. And then so she would ensure that there are highlights, there are everything that will be consolidated as before. So I'm sure then you'll be communicated to with regards to everything that has happened today. For me, it's just only for me to thank you and say what you have done, let us meet again. And then by all means, I think we'll meet again in the same platform. And then I hope that it will even be better than it has been even in the past. Let us just clap for each other and for ourselves. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. There's just a video of highlights that we just want to play. And then a few, and then after that we can have our coffee, and then we can depart, all right? Can play.
For us, we don't see this as just a meeting, we just see it now as a tradition. This is our tradition.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Just go well and go safe.